My question is for the Minister for Agriculture. The use of 1080 poison is entrenched across Victoria, despite almost every country in the world banning its use because of its incredible cruelty, because it indiscriminately kills non-target species, including many that are endangered, and domestic animals, all in prolonged and horrific circumstances. 1080 cannot be contained. Whether baits are buried, aerially dropped or from bait ejector units, the science proves it cannot be confined either to an area or species. The native apex predator of our environment, the dingo, is the target of most programs, and that is in itself a mistake of tragic proportions. Will the Minister and the Government join the rest of the civilised world and ban this cruel poison and instead invest in research into more humane methods of invasive species control and those that are already proven?
Minister.
President, I thank Mr Medic for his question, and I don't agree with all of the assertions in your question, Mr Medic, but I do agree with some of it, and in terms of efforts of finding other methods for pest control of wild dogs in particular, which is the main target of 1080, is something that we are certainly looking at, but in the absence of an effective eradication treatment for wild dogs, the devastation that wild dogs cause to farmers is pretty horrific, and I speak to farmers regularly about the impact of wild dogs on their properties. This isn't about just animals going to find food. This is about slaughter of lambs and the like, and it's pretty distressing. So I would say that the use of 1080 is strictly regulated. It's undertaken in accordance with the product label and Victorian directions for use. As I've said, none of the current other methods are available that would be a suitable alternative to 1080 at this time. Alternatives actually that are in existence may actually be less humane, pose increased risk to the health of users, or pose greater risk to non-target species. I note you're calling for the banning of 1080. I can't agree to that, Mr Medic. It would result in a less effective control of pest animals, increase cost and potentially cause harm to agriculture, environmental and other animal welfare outcomes. I do repeat that we would love to find some better alternatives that have good outcomes for humane purposes, and I'm committed to ensuring that our efforts are focused on that. We are certainly looking at other control methods. We have increased funding available for fire-affected areas to have better fencing to keep wild dogs out and the like. I would commend the work of our wild dog trappers. They're a pretty amazing cohort of people, very talented, specialised cohort of people who are very targeted in their approaches and very supported by farmers. The pest bait products containing PAP that are available for fox, wild dogs and feral cats are certainly included in the options of looking at all of the products that are under development so that we may reduce our need on 1080, but at this point in time I can't commit to reducing 1080 given its importance for the agricultural sector.
Mr Medic, supplementary.
Yes, thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. Will the Minister and the Government truly recognise the dingo's protected status in Victoria by eliminating the excuse of calling dingoes wild dogs and thereby allowing them to be baited? Because there seems to be the problem is that there is no definition between the two, and dingoes are unnecessarily killed as opposed to the wild dog, which is deemed to be an invasive species.
Yeah, and it's related to that poison. So, Minister.
Thank you, President. I thank Mr Medic for his supplementary question, which is probably better directed to the Minister for the Environment. However, I would probably note that there is a lot of conjecture about the status of a dingo versus wild dog and where the line's drawn, and I acknowledge that there is disputes over that, but your specific question would be better directed to Minister D'Ambrosio.